Father's Day started like any other quiet Sunday. I woke up early, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table enjoying the calm. After so many years of working non-stop, these slow mornings meant a lot to me. I wasn't expecting anything special. My son Evan and I hadn't spoken properly in months, so I had already accepted that this day would pass quietly. Around mid-morning, the doorbell rang. A delivery truck was outside. The driver handed me a medium-sized box, neatly wrapped, with my name written clearly on top. When I saw the return name, my chest tightened. It was from Evan. I stood there longer than I should have, just staring at it, feeling a mix of surprise, hope, and confusion. I brought the box inside and placed it on the table. My wife Laura walked in from the hallway and immediately noticed it. Her face changed in a way I had never seen before. The color drained from her cheeks. She walked closer, slowly, like she was afraid the box might explode. "What's that?" she asked. I told her it was from Evan. Before I could say anything else, she reached out and grabbed my arm. Her grip was tight. Her voice came out low and shaky. "Please don't open it." I laughed nervously, thinking she was joking, but her eyes were filled with panic. Her hands were trembling. She looked like someone who had just seen a ghost. That's when I felt something was wrong. "Why?" I asked. "It's just a gift." She shook her head, breathing fast. "Not now. Just, not now." Her reaction made no sense. This wasn't concern. This was fear. I searched her face, waiting for an explanation, but none came. She just stood there, staring at the box like it was dangerous. I slowly pulled my arm away. A heavy silence filled the room. My heart started beating faster, not from excitement, but from a deep, uncomfortable feeling in my gut. I hadn't done anything wrong, yet suddenly I felt like I was standing in the middle of something I didn't understand. Laura tried to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. She suggested we eat breakfast first, talk later, pretend everything was normal. But nothing felt normal anymore. That box sat between us on the table, untouched, louder than any argument we had ever had. I picked it up, feeling its weight. It wasn't heavy, but it felt important. Whatever was inside had already changed the mood of the day. Laura stepped back, her eyes never leaving the box. In that moment, I realized this wasn't just about a Father's Day gift. My wife's fear told me the truth before I even opened it. Something had been hidden from me for a long time, and whatever my son had sent was about to bring it into the light. For most of my life, I believed my marriage was solid. Laura and I had been together for 28 years. We weren't flashy or dramatic, but we were steady. At least, that's what I thought. We didn't fight much. We paid our bills on time. We showed up for family events. From the outside, we looked like the kind of couple people trusted and respected. I worked as a contractor for many years. The job wasn't easy, and the hours were long. Some days I left before sunrise and came home exhausted. I did it because I believed that providing for my family was my responsibility. Laura stayed home and took care of things there. She handled the house, schedules, and most of Evan's school life. I trusted her completely. I never felt the need to check on her or question her choices. Our son Evan was the center of our world. When he was younger, we were close in a way that felt natural and strong. We worked on small projects together, talked about his future, and shared quiet moments that didn't need words. I was proud of him, and I believed he felt the same about me. As Evan grew older and eventually moved out, things began to change. The phone calls became less frequent. Visits felt shorter and more distant. At first, I didn't worry. I told myself this was normal. Young adults build their own lives. They get busy. They pull away. Everyone says that happens, so I accepted it without question. Whenever I mentioned it, Laura always had an explanation ready. Evan was stressed. Evan needed space. Evan was finding himself. Her answer sounded reasonable, and I trusted her. I didn't push. I didn't want to seem controlling or desperate. I believed patience was the right choice. Looking back, there were small moments that didn't fully make sense, but I ignored them. Laura sometimes seemed tense when Evan's name came up. She avoided deeper conversations about him. If I suggested visiting him or inviting him over, she often changed the subject or delayed the idea. I thought she was just trying not to pressure him. I never imagined there could be another reason. I never suspected there was anything being kept from me. In my mind, our marriage was built on honesty. I believed that if something serious was wrong, I would know. I believed that after nearly 3 decades together, there were no secrets big enough to change everything. That belief gave me comfort. It allowed me to sleep at night and focus on my work. I thought I understood my family. I thought the distance was just time doing what time always does. I had no idea that while I was trusting and waiting, something much deeper had been quietly growing behind my back. The change with Evan didn't happen slowly. One day, things felt normal, and then suddenly they weren't. Calls went unanswered. Text messages stayed unread or received short replies that felt empty. When we did speak, his voice sounded distant, like he was talking out of obligation, not comfort. I tried to tell myself I was imagining it, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. I remember calling him one evening after work, just to check in. It went straight to voicemail. That wasn't unusual by itself, but when days passed without a call back, it started to hurt. I sent a message asking if everything was okay. His reply came hours later. Just a few words. No warmth. No questions for me. Each time I tried again, the result was the same. Conversations felt forced. There was no anger in his voice, just a cold distance that I couldn't explain. I replayed our last real conversation in my head over and over, wondering if I had said something wrong. I couldn't find anything. When I talked to Laura about it, she brushed it off. She said Evan was overwhelmed and needed space. She reminded me how hard it can be when young people are trying to build their lives. She told me not to push, not to make him feel pressured. Her tone was calm, almost protective. At first, her words made sense. She sounded like a mother who understood her child better than anyone. I trusted her instincts. If she believed giving him space was the right move, I didn't want to interfere. I stepped back, even though it went against what I felt as a father. There were moments when I wanted to drive over and see him face to face. Every time I brought it up, Laura gently talked me out of it. She said it would only make things worse. She said he would come around on his own. I listened. Over time, the silence became heavier. Holidays passed with quick messages instead of visits. Important moments were missed. I started feeling like a stranger in my own son's life. Still, I kept my concerns mostly to myself. I didn't want to create tension in the family. What I didn't realize then was that Laura's guidance wasn't just advice. It was control. She was shaping how much access I had to Evan, slowly and quietly. I believed she was protecting him from stress. I believed she was helping him cope. I never considered the idea that she might be protecting herself. I didn't see that my trust was being used against me. I thought patience would heal the distance. Instead, it allowed something hidden to grow stronger, while the bond between me and my son continued to fade. After Laura left the house that afternoon, the silence felt heavy. I sat alone at the table, staring at the box in front of me. I hadn't touched it since morning. Her reaction kept replaying in my mind, over and over. The fear in her eyes didn't fade. It stayed with me, pressing on my chest. I told myself I had a right to know what my own son had sent me. Slowly, I pulled the box closer. My hands felt stiff as I lifted the lid. Inside, everything was neatly arranged, like Evan had taken his time and thought carefully about each item. The first thing I saw was a small stack of old photographs. I picked one up and felt my throat tighten. They weren't recent. They were from years ago. Some were from times I didn't even remember being photographed. There were faces I recognized and places that felt familiar, but something about them felt off. I couldn't explain it yet. Under the photos was a flash drive. It was labeled with my name in Evan's handwriting. Seeing his writing again made my chest ache. It reminded me of when he was younger, when he used to leave notes around the house. Back then, those notes were full of jokes and small drawings. This felt different. Heavy. Final. At the bottom of the box was a folded letter. I knew before opening it that this was the heart of everything. I sat back in my chair and took a deep breath before unfolding the paper. The first lines were calm and respectful. Evan told me he hoped I was okay. He said he didn't want to hurt me, but he couldn't keep carrying the weight of the truth anymore. As I kept reading, my hands began to shake. The tone of the letter changed. His words became direct and painful. He wrote about secrets that had been kept for years. He wrote about lies that shaped his childhood and damaged our relationship. Each sentence felt like it was peeling away something I had believed was real. He explained that staying silent had cost him too much. He said it had affected how he saw himself and how he saw me. He admitted he had pulled away not because he didn't care, but because he was trapped between loyalty and truth. Reading that hurt more than I expected. Near the end of the letter, Evan wrote that he understood if this changed everything. He said the truth might destroy the family as I knew it, but hiding it was destroying him. He said I deserved to know, even if it broke my heart. When I finished reading, I just sat there. The house felt smaller, like the walls were closing in. I hadn't even plugged in the flash drive yet, but I already knew my life was about to change. Whatever Evan had shared wasn't just information. It was a turning point, and there was no way back from it. I finally gathered the strength to plug in the flash drive. My hands felt cold as I opened the files. There were scanned documents, saved messages, and dated notes. Everything was organized, like Evan wanted to make sure nothing could be misunderstood. As I went through them one by one, a clear picture began to form, and it was nothing like the life I thought I had lived. The files showed proof of a long relationship between Laura and a man I knew very well, Mark Benson. Mark wasn't a stranger. He had been my business partner years ago. We worked side by side, trusted each other, and built projects together. I had welcomed him into my home. He had sat at my table. Seeing his name connected to Laura felt unreal, like my mind was refusing to accept it. There were old messages that left no room for doubt. They weren't casual or friendly. They showed planning, secrecy, and years of emotional and physical involvement. Dates lined up with periods when I had been working long hours or away on jobs. The betrayal wasn't a mistake or a short moment of weakness. It was something that had lasted a long time. Then I reached the part that hurt the most. Evan had included information that explained his silence and distance. According to what he found years ago, there was a strong possibility that Mark was his biological father. There were test results and conversations that pointed in that direction. Evan didn't discover this as an adult. He learned it when he was still young enough to be confused and scared. What crushed me wasn't just the possibility itself, but the fact that Laura knew. She had known for years. Instead of telling me, she chose to protect herself. She made Evan promise not to say anything. She told him it would destroy the family, that I wouldn't be able to handle it, that silence was the only way to keep things together. Evan wrote that she warned him again and again not to speak. She told him that if he did, everything would fall apart and it would be his fault. Over time, that pressure changed him. It turned his confusion into guilt and his fear into anger. I became the safe person to push away, the one who didn't know the truth. Laura slowly shifted the blame onto me without saying it directly. She allowed Evan to believe I was the reason things felt wrong. She let the distance grow because it made her secret safer. While I thought I was being patient, she was quietly rewriting the story of our family. By the time I finished going through the files, I felt hollow. This wasn't just about betrayal between spouses. It was about a child being forced to carry a secret that was never his responsibility. It was about trust being used as a weapon. The truth was finally clear, and there was no denying it anymore. When Laura came home that evening, I was waiting for her. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse her right away. I just asked her to sit down. The calm in my voice seemed to make her nervous. She looked at my face and knew something had changed. I told her I had opened the box. Her eyes widened for a brief moment before she looked away. That small reaction told me more than any words could. I placed a few of the papers on the table between us. I didn't explain them. I didn't need to. Her shoulders dropped. The strength she always showed disappeared in seconds. She didn't start by apologizing. She started by asking how much I knew. Her voice shook, but not from sadness. It was fear. Fear of losing control. Slowly, she began to talk. She admitted the affair. She admitted it lasted for years. She admitted lying to my face every day without breaking a sweat. She explained how she convinced herself it was necessary, how she told herself it didn't change who I was or what I provided. Then she said something I will never forget. She told me I had been a good provider, but I was never enough. Not emotionally. Not in the ways she wanted. She said it calmly, like she was explaining a simple fact. Those words cut deeper than the truth itself. She talked about the choices she made as if they were logical steps, not betrayals. She said she was protecting the family. She said she was keeping things stable. She didn't talk about guilt or remorse. She talked about consequences and exposure. As she spoke, I realized something painful. This wasn't a marriage that fell apart because of one bad decision. It was a life built on carefully managed lies. I wasn't her partner. I was part of the structure that allowed her to live two lives without facing the truth. I asked her why she let Evan suffer. Why she allowed him to carry a burden that wasn't his. For the first time, she cried. Not because of the pain she caused him, but because she was afraid of what would happen now that the truth was out. She said she never thought it would reach this point. She believed silence would last forever. She believed control was the same as safety. Listening to her, I felt something inside me go quiet. The love I had held on to didn't turn into anger. It simply disappeared. In that moment, I understood that the marriage I believed in never truly existed. It wasn't broken by betrayal. It was shaped by it from the very beginning. And once I saw that clearly, there was nothing left to save. After everything came out, my first thought wasn't about my marriage anymore. It was about Evan. I realized how much time had been lost and how much pain he had been carrying alone. I didn't want to approach him with anger or questions that would push him away again. I wanted him to know that, no matter what, I was still here. I reached out to him and asked if we could talk in person. I didn't explain why. I didn't defend myself. I simply said I wanted to see him. He agreed, but his response was careful, like he was preparing himself for something difficult. We met in a quiet place where we could talk without interruptions. At first, neither of us spoke much. The silence felt heavy, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence filled with things that had gone unsaid for years. I told him I was sorry. Not for something specific, but for the distance between us. I told him I should have fought harder to stay close, even when he pulled away. He listened without interrupting, his eyes fixed on the table. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm but tired. He told me he never stopped seeing me as his father. He said I was the one who showed up, who taught him right from wrong, who supported him when it mattered. He said blood never changed that in his heart. He explained how confusing it had been growing up with half-truths and pressure. He talked about how the bond between us slowly weakened, not because of hate, but because of manipulation. He said things were said about me that made him doubt himself and his feelings. Over time, he didn't know who to trust. Listening to him hurt, but it also brought clarity. I could see how deeply the situation had affected him. The distance between us wasn't natural. It was created and maintained by fear and control. Understanding that didn't erase the past, but it helped us see each other clearly again. We talked about the years we lost. About missed moments that could never be replaced. There were no raised voices, no accusations. Just honesty and grief. We both understood that the damage was real, and it would take time to heal. Before we left, Evan looked at me and said something that I will carry with me forever. He said that no matter what the truth was on paper, I was the only father he ever knew. In that moment, I felt a connection that no secret could break. We didn't fix everything that day, but we took the first step toward rebuilding what had been taken from us. After talking with Evan, I knew one thing for sure: I couldn't act out of anger. Exploding would only create chaos and give Laura a chance to turn herself into the victim. I had already seen how carefully she controlled stories and people. I wasn't going to give her that power again. Instead, I slowed everything down. I started gathering what I needed, quietly and carefully. I made copies of documents. I saved records. I wrote down timelines while they were still clear in my mind. I didn't rush. I didn't threaten. I simply prepared. I met with a lawyer and laid everything out honestly. I didn't exaggerate or hide anything. I wanted things handled the right way, not emotionally, but legally. The lawyer explained my options and what steps would protect me in the long run. For the first time in a long while, I felt steady. At home, Laura acted as if time would fix things. She assumed I would calm down, that I would choose comfort over truth. She talked about counseling and moving forward. She avoided details and focused on keeping things quiet. Every word made it clear she believed forgiveness was guaranteed. I didn't argue with her. I didn't correct her assumptions. I let her believe what she wanted. My silence made her comfortable, and that comfort worked in my favor. While she relaxed, I finalized my decisions. When the papers were ready, I filed for divorce. I didn't warn her beforehand. I didn't give a speech. She found out the same way the truth always finds its way out, through official documents that can't be talked away. Her reaction was immediate shock. She accused me of being cold and unforgiving. She said I was throwing everything away. I didn't respond to her emotions. I stayed focused on facts. I wasn't seeking revenge through humiliation or pain. I was seeking fairness and accountability. I made sure my assets were protected. I followed the law exactly. No shortcuts. No hidden moves. Everything was clean and documented. The truth didn't need drama to be powerful. It only needed light. I didn't go out of my way to expose her publicly, but I also didn't protect lies anymore. When asked direct questions in the proper settings, I answered honestly. I let the truth speak for itself. That was enough. What surprised me most was how calm I felt through it all. The anger I thought would come never really did. What I felt instead was clarity. I wasn't doing this to punish her. I was doing it to finally stand on solid ground. By choosing patience over rage, I took control of my life again. Laura lost the one thing she always relied on, my silence. And this time, I didn't have to raise my voice to make that clear. The changes didn't happen all at once. They came quietly, one after another, like doors closing that would never open again. Laura lost the life she worked so hard to control. The marriage was over, and with it went the image she had carefully maintained for years. Family members who once trusted her began to see the truth, not through rumors, but through facts that could no longer be denied. There were no loud arguments or dramatic scenes. The distance between her and everyone else simply grew. Conversations became short and uncomfortable. Invitations stopped coming. The control she once had over how things looked and sounded was gone. She couldn't explain her way out of it anymore. Mark disappeared completely. There were no calls, no support, no presence. Once the situation was real and public in the ways that mattered, he was nowhere to be found. Whatever connection they once shared couldn't survive honesty. Watching that happen didn't bring me satisfaction. It just confirmed what I already knew about the kind of people they were. I didn't celebrate any of it. There was no sense of victory. What happened was the result of choices, not punishment. I felt sadness for what was lost, but also relief. The weight I had carried without knowing it was finally gone. What mattered most to me was Evan. Our relationship didn't repair itself overnight, but it moved forward with honesty. He stayed in my life by choice, not obligation. There were no more secrets between us. We talked openly, even when conversations were uncomfortable. That honesty created something stronger than what we had before. He made it clear that his decision had nothing to do with biology. He said being a father wasn't about blood, but about consistency, effort, and showing up. Hearing that didn't erase the past, but it gave meaning to everything I had done right. Life became quieter. Simpler. I focused on my work, my health, and rebuilding a sense of normal. I stopped replaying old moments in my head. There was nothing left to figure out. The truth had settled where it belonged. Laura faded into the background of my life. Not because I pushed her there, but because there was no longer a role for her to play. I didn't hate her. I didn't wish her harm. I just let go. Peace didn't come from revenge or watching someone fall. It came from no longer living in confusion. I finally understood my life as it truly was, and that understanding gave me the freedom to move forward without bitterness. The next Father's Day arrived quietly. There were no expectations, no gifts, no cards. I didn't even plan anything special. All I wanted was to spend the day with Evan, without distractions, without pretending everything was normal. After all we had been through, normal didn't exist anymore. We met at a small cafe in town, one of those places we used to go when he was younger. The kind with wooden tables, soft music, and a smell of fresh coffee. It felt familiar, but different. This time, it was just the two of us. No Laura, no Mark, no secrets. Just truth. We talked about simple things first, the weather, work, little updates. Then the conversation shifted naturally toward us. I didn't lecture, and he didn't accuse. We shared memories, some funny, some bittersweet. We laughed quietly at moments from the past and paused at the ones that still hurt. It was strange, how easy it felt to be with him when all the weight of lies was gone. At one point, I just looked at him and said how proud I was of the man he had become. He smiled softly and said he was proud of me too, not because of blood, but because I had always been there. That simple acknowledgement, after years of distance and hidden truths, felt heavier than any gift could ever be. We didn't talk about Laura much, only briefly. There was no anger, no bitterness. We didn't need to drag the past into the day. What mattered was that we were present with each other, fully and honestly. The box he had sent the year before, the one that terrified Laura, had done its job in its own way. It had forced the truth into the open, allowed walls to fall, and made space for us to reconnect. I thought about all the pain, the betrayal, the long months of confusion and distance. I realized that the box hadn't destroyed my life. It revealed it. It showed who truly cared, who was honest, and who belonged. Some people left, some stayed, and some finally became real in a way I could trust. By the end of the day, we didn't make plans or promises. We just walked together, side by side, enjoying the quiet. The sun was setting, painting the sky with soft oranges and pinks. I felt a peace I hadn't known for years. It wasn't about revenge, or closure, or punishment. It was about knowing what mattered and being free to hold on to it. That Father's Day wasn't special because of gifts or speeches. It was special because it was real. Evan and I had reclaimed something that had been stolen, our bond. I understood that betrayal doesn't always end families. Sometimes, it exposes who truly belongs in them. And for the first time in a long time, I felt certain that the people who mattered most were still by my side.